Welcome back, everyone. The Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, has sent a letter to the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment, as well as the Ministry of Education, stating its intention to commence a nationwide strike. And according to a source from ASUU, quoting, "This is not an ultimatum, but a formal strike notice. We're providing a 21-day notice before we proceed with the strike." ASUU President, Professor Emmanuel Sodeke, said the reason for the strike is due to a lack of implementation of agreements reached with the federal government. So tonight, let's get the perspective of Professor Kayode Isuola, political scientist, research professor at the Institute of African and Diaspora Studies, University of Lagos. Prof, good evening to you. Thank you very much for joining us on Politics Tonight.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me.
Right, so
Research Associate Professor, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that correction.
Yeah.
So let's start with how the new administration has fared with handling the education sector, with increased budgetary allocation and the newly implemented student loan scheme. How significant are these latest developments?
Well, some good attempts have been made. Whether the attempts are significant enough to achieve the overall, turnaround that is needed in the educational sector is a debate. So the use of the word significant may not come in at this point, but that does not mean that the government has not made some good attempts that are commendable. Like you said, the students' loan, and of course, a plethora of activities here and there, but never can be considered significant yet, given the state that we are in this country in terms of education. Yeah.
So I know you had your reservation about the student loan at some time. What's your impression about it now?
Well, compared to when it started, as a plan, as a political statement, now that it is being implemented, a lot of things have gone in the line. There have been attempts to rework over and over again. There have been attempts by the management of the scheme to get input from the stakeholders, especially the university union, as it were. Particularly aware that at the inception, the leadership went to several institutions, taking criticisms and contributions of stakeholders so that the scheme could be workable. This is against the background that the initial criticism was that you could not shave people's head behind them. It was not good for you to institute a program like that without considering the input of the stakeholders in the university. Now that things like that have been done, I think there's an improvement, and it can only get better because policies are made, and over the years that they go into operation, they are subject to more and more input, and then improvement will be coming along the line. So it can only get better.
All right then. Prof, we outsiders now, we thought there was this agreement between the federal government and ASUU to make strike a forgotten issue. But now that it looks like ASUU has given the federal government a 21-day ultimatum, a warning of a potential nationwide strike. This time, what are the demands? Well,
you at the outside world have that impression. I don't have that impression.
Was there an agreement?
Don't let us look at strike as a sacrosanct human behavior that has to be nilled the bud at a point in time or dismissed at another time. Strike is a form of protest against conditions that are unsatisfactory. Okay? When you run a society, so long as there are issues to grind, so long as there are agitations, there will always be strike. No court in the world can deny people the right to strike. Therefore, there is no society that will ever have an agreement that strike will be an end or a thing of the past. If there are issues to protest against, there must always be strike.
So what I meant by agreement was, we thought the federal government and ASUU decided that, okay, before the union goes on strike, there must be an avenue for dialogue. I mean, first, second, third time, then an agreement, a resolution must be reached before the union decides to go on strike. So now that the union is threatening to go on strike, is it that there has been no meeting with the federal government, this present administration and ASUU in the last 1 year?
Let me make this clear right from the outset that I am not one of the officials of the union,
okay.
So I don't have the mandate to speak on behalf of the body union. However, I'm a member of the union, a very strong and active member at that. So I'm expressing it based on my voice as a member of the union. I think over the years, the Nigerian government has abused the idea of dialogue.
Okay.
You reached an agreement with the union in 2009. If your maths does not fail you, that's well over 15 years, if I'm not mistaken, okay? Something around that. And then with that agreement, you've been perambulating. Today, re-agreement. Another day, memorandum of action. Another day, memorandum of whatever, series of nomenclature used by Nigerian government to implement an agreement that was signed in 2009. Today, that agreement is yet to be signed. There had been efforts. The Nimi Bridge Committee came out with something. This government refused blatantly.
This particular administration?
Well, government is a continuum, you know, whether you like it or not. That's why Abuja is the seat of government. It's nobody's family house. You move out, you move in. Government exists as a continuum. The government has refused, okay, to implement the agreement. Okay, at the inception, people will say, well, this is a new administration. It is barely 6 months, 4 months, 2 months. Now, the administration is running to the second year. Nothing significant has ever been done about an agreement of 2009. So what is the dialogue you're talking about? There have been abuse of dialogue by the government. And of course, our union is never in a position of not wanting to do further dialogue. But if you listen to the speeches of the president of ASUU, okay, or the press releases that have accompanied this new dimension, you will notice that the government has even refused to encourage or participate in further dialogue. For me, that's an abuse. And it's high time it is stopped on the part of the government. My sister, in any nation, there are stages of socialization. At the family, you are socialized, you are trained to be honest, to live up to your word. I mean, wherever you go. Do not say yes when you mean to say no. That's what we all started with. When you leave the family, you go to school. When you leave the school, you go to university. When you leave the university, you begin to work. At the public place, the government is the teacher. The government is the most principal agent of socialization. When government now makes agreement on its own honor and refuses blatantly to honor that agreement, who else in the society do you ever again trust? That makes it sad, not only to you and I, but even it's a way of socializing wrongly the youngsters who are watching us. If you can't trust government, who do you trust in a society?
All right, Prof. Now let's lay bare the issues. Like I asked earlier, what exactly are these demands?
Well, again, this is not this is not an official statement from ASUU, but I'm a strong member of the union, so I have the capacity to say what we have been talking about at different congresses that will dovetail into what ASUU will say. The first one is the refusal by the government to implement the 2009 agreement. Everybody knows that. The second one is that ASUU is saying that it is ludicrous, if not insulting, for the federal government to continue to proliferate universities when, of course, you are publicly complaining that you cannot fund. You do not have the capacity to fund the existing one. I mean, put on a common terrain, it's like you are a father in the house, you have one wife, 6 children, and you are complaining to the whole world that, oh, these bills are too many for me to handle. And then the next thing you do is get 2 other wives and give birth to 17 other children. Who does that? That's what ASUU is saying. There are several other ones, but I think these 2 are key. Then revitalization of the educational system. Look, we in this part of the world, the challenge that we face is insecurity, number 1. Insecurity in terms of food, in terms of water, in terms of housing, and all these things. And how, for heaven's sake, do you address insecurity without going into education? If you educate people, they probably will not become extremists who will go on the street to fight because of religion. If you educate people, they probably will not take cutlass and gun against one another tomorrow because they have different ethnic groups. If you educate people, they become civil. And so if there's any nation in the world that should give priority to education, it should be Nigeria. And where you are, I mean, here you are, the Nigerian government not prioritizing education, leaving the dons in the university impoverished. You saw in the social media only recently, a man who claimed he had a PhD, was a lecturer in the Polytechnic, who had to go sell his car battery to be able to feed his children on a particular money. I mean, it went viral. It trended for a long time. People began to contribute 10,000, 5,000. Any nation that reduces its intellectual class to the begging class is heading for disaster, and that is what Nigeria is heading for. Well, heavens forbid if you choose.
All right, Prof, let's take these issues one after the other. And I'd like us to start with the renegotiation of the 2009 agreement. Because as we're saying, 2 years after, it looks like the federal government is not willing to honor the agreement and meet and attend to their demands.
It's not that it looks like. That is what it is.
Okay, so, I mean, has there been, and once again, has there been any meeting with this present administration in that regard?
There have been meetings. But I'm aware that apart from the meetings that I've held, the government in its usual character has been playing hanky-panky. Okay, and then at a particular point, they refuse coming for meetings. Okay?
At what point is that?
It is not rocket science to implement. Do you even need meetings to implement agreements that have been signed? You don't need meetings. They're just wasting people's time. And academics are very busy people. I mean, they're in the university conducting research, teaching, assessing doctoral theses. These are the people you are calling for meetings only for you not to turn out. This is not done. You know. So I don't think ASUU is averse to meetings. But when you have meetings and you agree on certain issues at meetings, and the government, the principal who is supposed to implement, begins to play game. And then at a point, it stops coming for meeting. What do you do?
Okay.
And for those who have been saying, all ASUU knows is strike, please, we have challenged the world. What other language does the Nigerian government understand apart from strike? You know, if you had implemented the agreement that you were supposed to implement, nobody would go on strike. So I think today, beyond talking about ASUU, I have a message for the president of the country. I have a message for the nation at large. Integrity at its peak should be on the table of the government. Government shouldn't be an institution that will sign an agreement and make promises without fulfilling. It is socializing Nigerian youngsters wrongly. They will all turn out to think that is the way to live. And if we are reduced to that level by our own government, our nation is finished. Our future is finished. I'm pained as I'm talking, not because I'm just a member of ASUU, but because the same thing keeps occurring in all sectors in Nigeria, apart from ASUU. How do you run a nation like that?
So, Prof, there is a lot of miscommunication out there. So I'd like you to help us with some clarification.
Okay.
Now, some of your colleagues say this delay in renegotiating that agreement has left academic staff on the same salary structure for over a decade. How correct is that?
That's correct. We're talking about between 2009 and now.
Okay. So I'd like you to help us with some clarifications, because it was in 2022 that Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila announced that the federal government was working on the 2023 appropriation bills, which include a sum of 170 billion naira to provide a level of increment in the welfare package of university lecturers. And that bill also included additional 300 billion naira in revitalization funds to improve the infrastructure and operations of federal universities. Was that a fluke?
Your guess is as good as mine. I cannot go into figures that are specific because you have spoken from the public sphere. The union has its own figure, and I do
What
not.
are the figures?
I do not have those accurate figures, so I cannot go into figures that I don't know in accurate sense. But the fact is that it is a dot check. I know so. The press knows so. The entire Nigerian people, the entire world know that it was a promise that never got fulfilled. And as I said, if the university dons could not trust people like Gbajabiamila as at that time, and it snowballed into the current period when you can't even trust what government is saying, where are we heading to? It is the Nigerian government that is now deliberately pushing ASUU again into strike. If you look at an average academic, it doesn't need much to have a good job. Whoever chooses to be a teacher in the university, even in the secondary school, is probably a very contented person. And ASUU is saying, I don't want to earn millions of naira like lawmakers, like all those who are given 30-something million. So we're saying that I am a professional. Give me what I need to do my job. Give me a salary that makes me compete with others around the world so that my university can be vital and get into good rankings that you have around the world. That's what we are saying. That's what we're talking about. And the Nigerian government does not see that as a priority. I don't want to go into details of what has been bought, whether it is presidential jet or yacht or something. But again, an analogy of a family where your children cannot go to school, you are owing tuition in their schools, you can't pay their bills, you don't have food at home, there's insecurity, and then the father goes around buying, exotic cars to show off in parties and all this. Do you not call such a person a perambulator, like Fela Anikulapo Kuti would say?
Well, there are those who argue with you that that was very, very important. But let's also go back to
that's why I didn't want to mention it.
Absolutely.
It depends on what you call your national priority.
Well, let me bring up something Professor Sodike said. He mentioned the stoppage of illegal recruitment, and I'm wondering, what does that mean?
The stoppage of what?
Illegal recruitment. He mentioned stoppage of illegal recruitment. This is part of the demands by ASUU. So I'm wondering what exactly...
That cannot be that. There's something wrong here. The stoppage of illegal recruitment?
Yes. Illegal recruitment into the university system is part of the demands of ASUU at this moment. So I'm wondering what exactly that means. And I also want to use the opportunity to ask, how does a prospective lecturer get into a government university? Okay,
so perhaps I need to rephrase that. The way the university works is that people operate based on expertise. It is the university via departments and faculties that determine the expertise that is needed at any point in time.
Okay.
And so that is processed into the Senate, into the Council, and recruitment take place. Okay. Now, in the case of IPPIS, you need to go to Abuja and lobby, use the word lobby, the civil servants over there for you to be able to recruit. And we are saying that cannot work with the university system. It's not in line with what we practice. You can't go on sabbatical, you can't recruit people. For the past 5 years, almost all the departments are depleted. The young ones, especially from assistant lectureship to what you have in the third cadre up to senior lectureship, are running away every day, almost every year. I mean, everywhere. The bottom, is depleted. And those are the ones who really do the work.